Roll for Crit is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Come roll with us at patreon.com/rollforcrit. Some big changes in the board game industry from the last week. Things are moving and shaking. Were your favorite games affected? Find out right now in our news roundup.
Asmodee. Say their name 3 times in a mirror, and they acquire a company. We have recently learned that they've acquired Plan B Games, which does a whole variety of popular games, but most notably, Azul, a well-loved entry-level game. They've also gotten the distribution rights for 3 other companies, Fantasia, Tabletop Tycoon, and Thundergriff Games. Once again, they are growing exponentially. They're gaining all these games, and I don't know how many companies are left for them to get and acquire.
There's only so many companies that are out there before they are consumed by Asmodee. Plan B is certainly a big one, and that's the one that they are really acquiring. As you said, the other 3 are more distribution deals, but that still means they have their hands in them. They're involved in a significant way.
Yeah, I would say that the Plan B would be much more to the consumer's effect. For example, if you are missing a piece or something, you're going to have to go through Asmodee's customer service.
Right.
When the other ones, I think, are going to be much more trouble or boon, depending on the more of the sellers. You know, it's going to mean you can only go through certain distributors, which I know we used to do. And man, don't you love it when you can only get a certain game from one distributor?
Right. I mean, through Asmodee itself sometimes, yeah, and it can be more difficult, and it means, they just have more control over the pricing and who gets those games, and that can mean that it's harder to find for consumers or more expensive in the end. And yeah, it's yet another big acquisition with Azul. It really seems like Asmodee also, they wisely so want those big gateway games, those popular titles for early gamers and casual gamers that are also kind of evergreen, like your Catans and whatnot and your Splendors that everybody kind of loves. And I think just like when this happens every time, we always say like, yep, it's even worse now. And we continue to see it and kind of go, well, nothing's really, like, the world keeps turning and we have bigger issues to worry about right now, but it does seem like we get closer and closer and closer to a point where they're gonna sell everything off or just collapse or explode, or like there's gonna be a boiling point. I don't know what's gonna happen, but they're moving towards something.
I actually think at this point what we're going to see is pretty much when you go even to your local game store, but in this sense, your Target or Walmart, when you go to the game shelf, there are 2 companies you're buying from, Hasbro and Asmodee. It's because we sort of agree with each other, wink, we're not monopolies. So it allows them to do some really big control while being able to still skirt that line where they can be broken up, which is usually not a good thing for us. But maybe I'm just being a pessimist.
But if they do merge, I think it would be great because they can call themselves Hasbro Day. Some good news and some bad news for players of KeyForge, Fantasy Flight's unique card game from Richard Garfield. The bad news is their upcoming Dark Tidings expansion has been delayed. It was supposed to be released just a few days ago. Due to various shipping issues, it is now going to have a staggered release, so there may be some places in the world where it's available now, and it should be available everywhere by mid-April, but it's not the rollout they were hoping to have. Perhaps in place of that, or to help you cope with that delay, they have also announced a new mode for KeyForge, KeyForge Adventures. This is a fully cooperative version of the game, where up until now it has been competitive only. And there are going to be 2 print-and-play adventures released on their website that you'll be able to download, one releasing in April, the other in May. Both of them involve playing against an AI-controlled deck that will have various cards and creatures come out for you to fight against by yourself or with another player. And the first one is going to involve you fighting against the Keyraken, a great beast that's going to gain more power for the unforged keys that you have. And the other one has you searching through a series of face-down cards in a grid, exploring the sea, trying to find things that you're looking for in order to complete the win condition there. I think what's really cool about this co-op version of KeyForge, I mean, first of all, that adds a lot of longevity, solo play. That's great, especially in the times like today where the tournament scene is not happening. It's hard to get together with people at the local gaming store. So that's a nice bump to replayability for it. And I think it's great for KeyForge in particular because as they say in this article, you may have some decks that don't work that well competitively or for your style, but because these co-op games have, even the different scenarios have different types of win conditions, you may find that certain things actually work better in this scenario than they do in a competitive format. So hopefully that will give some new longevity to the game, and I'm excited to see. It might be something that we enjoy playing together more than we even liked the competitive version.
This entire story to me actually is mostly positive news. Obviously, like you said, new cooperative things gives each card new meaning. Like, sure, like you said, this even like a deck, you can't change the decks, but this card is okay in a competitive meta, whatever's going on. But against this particular boss, it's really good. So certain decks will be able to get a new breath of life in them. As for the delay, I can promise you, it is much better to get a delay and then have things well stocked than them to sort of do a really poor release and you never be able to get your hands on any copy of the deck because you weren't at the store right at opening.
Yes, there certainly is a bright side there. At least you will be able to get your hands on it, hopefully sooner rather than later.
We have a huge history of games, and one line that I want to show that off is the Euro Classic line from Z-Man Games. This line included some old classics, including Ra, Tigris and Euphrates, and Samurai, and was slated to receive in its line Princes of Florence. However, things have changed, and the company isn't so sure anymore that these will sell very well, at least maybe not outside crowdfunding. So they are not only ending the Prince of Florence game from coming out, but they're ending the entire line. Those games will return to their creators, and any stock left over will be sold, but there will be no more reprints. It is interesting at the very least to see how they bring up how well will these games sell anymore and what are trends now. Because I will admit, I'm not the guy who's going to be picking up the Euro game first if I'm looking to buy a new game. I am that Fantasy Flight, heavy thematic, the Ameritrash game style. That's my jam. I'm not saying these games aren't good and I wouldn't play them. It's just, it's not the flashy thing that is more likely to draw my attention and probably my wallet.
I think it's important to point out that it's also, as they mentioned in the article where they made this announcement, an issue of Z-Man growing as a company and the fact that they have certain lines they need to pay attention to. So I think it's a combination of factors. It's not that they're strictly saying these games don't sell anymore, but I think the way I read it was more that they just don't have the time and resources to devote to making them sell in addition to their other responsibilities.
Right, so, but I do think part of that, and you're not wrong, but I think the fact that they have to put in more, I feel like, a significant resource for Euro to sell, like, how much do they have to do for Pandemic? They probably just slap that name on something. And, they literally can probably email any one of us, right, who make videos and we'll be like, yes, we will take Pandemic stuff.
But that's even because, that's a franchise at this point. I think it's not so much about the genre or the style, the fact that they are Euro games. It's just the fact that there's only one Tigris and Euphrates. There's not Tigris and Euphrates Marvel Edition, right?
That is part of it. I can't think of how many. Is there a Euro game line?
It depends on
just like the designer.
It depends on how you categorize it. I mean, I would argue Ticket to Ride and Carcassonne and Catan to some extent. Those are more on the Euro game side. And they certainly have their expansions. But the Euro game has become an Ameritrash. Those terms have sort of blurred because I think a lot of games now are a hybrid of those two things.
Right. Anytime you get into genres, I think once something is alive round enough, like whether it be this, movies, music, they tend to not be nearly as easy to categorize as we like to believe. But yeah. At the very least, it is interesting to see some of these things. And like they mentioned too, like, is Kickstarter the only way we'll see some of these things now?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a shame because I really like the look of those classic lines they had. I think that it was great to have them in a uniform set, and they had a nice coat of polish. And it's too bad they weren't able to get Princess of Florence, since they had obviously done some work on it. But at least the creators will have the rights to them. So with any luck, we'll see them put them out some other way, maybe through Kickstarter, like you said, or maybe with a different publisher. White Wizard Games is notable for their releases such as Star Realms and Hero Realms, very successful deck building games. They have announced some changes for the future. Most notably, they are changing their name from White Wizard Games to Wise Wizard Games, based on some feedback from the community as well as their own internal management. And along with this announcement, they have said that they are bringing out some new releases for the future, a couple of new expansions for the games I mentioned, Star Realms and Hero Realms. They also have a new title called Robot Quest Arena, which involves you building a little battle bot with various cards, and then a new Richard Garfield design, Riders of Chaos, a miniatures game where you are battling a warrior and a beast that they have to accompany them and pulling off combos, fighting other players in the arena. Always worth looking at when there's a new Richard Garfield design. While they do not give a specific reason for this name change, it seems to me that, at least my first impression, is that White Wizard maybe was a little bit too close to white supremacy, KKK thing. And I think that's something they are trying to avoid, understandably. And I think Wise Wizard, it's perfect because it's pretty much the same idea. It sounds almost the same, and you don't really have to change a lot of the logos. WWG is still the same abbreviation, slots right in. I think it's a fine name change, and everything else they announced sounds like it's worth looking forward to.
Yeah, I read some more on that, and the initial, by the way, the name was based off Gandalf.
Right.
That's where they got the thing from. But once someone's like, that's a rank of the KKK, I'm like, oh. Yeah, now I'm a little, and while Wise Wizards in my head feels either redundant or it doesn't come off the tongue as well saying it, I love the fact that they're like, look, let's make sure it stays WWG, like it doesn't affect us too much, but I can just imagine so much easier for any kind of coding or distribution thing. It seems like a small thing, but as someone to me who knows all those things can be really annoying, those small changes, I really appreciate that. But I mean, let's talk about those games, though. Richard Garfield, he made Magic, so I'm always interested in whatever he makes.
Yeah, or as I like to say, he made KeyForge. So I'm always interested in what he makes. And King of Tokyo and Robo Rally and so many others. I mean, he's a huge designer.
He's a safe bet. He's certain names that you can always be like, it's worth at least taking a look at.
Yeah, so we don't know much about those games just yet. Hopefully details will come in the future, but they also, of course, redid their whole website design, so you can check that out to find future updates.
We're not going to leave you without some game releases as well. First off, we have Code 3, an 80s theme police crime fighting game when you will play through different scenarios and try to be able to make sure you can deal with all the 911 calls. You want to learn more? We actually made a how to play for that. We've also got Dungeons & Dragons Candlekeep Mysteries. This book includes a bunch of different scenarios in which you can play standalone scenarios with your group or maybe weave them into your own campaign. Hack and Slash from Steve Jackson Games, in which you are, once again, similar to our earlier thing with Dungeons & Dragons, playing as a group of adventurers trying to complete quests on cards. Then we have Influencia, which is a trick-taking game with a cyberpunk twist, but in Italy. Will you be able to trick the net runners as well as the major corporations in order to get the most victory points? Obviously, I know for me, the big one is the Dungeons & Dragons book. I love the idea behind this, and I want more books like that. Like, don't get me wrong. I know everyone would love to see their sagas, whether it's like Tiamat or bringing back other old stories, but I love these more smaller collections because they're more likely to be a bit weirder and different, maybe even experimental things in there. And of course, a good chance there's more puzzle stuff in there, and that's the kind of stuff I love. Like, don't get me wrong, anyone can throw a giant dragon at me, but what kind of weird puzzles can you come up with to throw my way? It's the kind of stuff I like.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different authors do all the different stories in that one, so it's fun to see people's different takes on it. Lots of good stuff, and some big news stories, of course, this week. 3 out of the 4 revolved around Asmodee in one way or another. So they're taking over our channel as well as the industry itself. You can let us know in the comments what you think about all of that, and if you have any opinions on any of the things we discussed today.
Let us know if you are pessimistic or optimistic. Till then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this is Roll for Crit.
We would love it if you liked and subscribed to this channel and supported us on Patreon as well.
For legal reasons, we've got to disclose we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with more awesome content.